Welcome back everybody, Stephen here with Four Oaks Crafts. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to turn Christmas trees made of deer antler. As you may know, the white-tailed deer sheds his antlers every year, so there's lots of deer antler available for beautiful crafts like you see in this tutorial. In the comments field, let me know what you like to make with deer antler. If you're a beginner wood turner, this is a great starter project. Be sure to watch all the way through, since I will be sharing my best tips for working with deer antler. Step number one, first I need to choose an antler piece to turn. I like to choose a piece that's fairly round, maybe an inch in diameter. Use a piece that's fairly straight. Now I know this can be challenging because antler is naturally curvy. Generally the base of the antler has the straightest pieces, but they're also the most porous. And as a general rule, the bigger the antler, the more choices you have. Unlike wood, antler will vary in its porosity. The pieces I use the most are toward the base of the antler. Those tend to be more porous as you move to the center of the antler. I'll talk about how to deal with this later in the video. Step number two, now I'm going to cut out the antler blank. I found that the bandsaw works well when cutting out antler blanks. If you don't have a bandsaw, you can simply use a hacksaw. I like to use either my dust collector or shop vac also when doing this step because antler produces dust and a little odor. Some people complain about the odor when sawing antler, but it doesn't really bother me. I recommend the length be anywhere from 2.5 inches to 3 inches long for the Christmas tree. Step number three is to prepare the antler blank for turning. First, prepare a wooden waste block, preferably a couple inches thick. There should be a faceplate that came with your lathe. You can screw a round wooden waste block to this faceplate, and the faceplate has threads that will screw into the spindle or the headstock of your lathe. True up the face of the wooden block with a parting tool, a skew chisel, or a carbide tool with a square cutting tip. This will make the wooden block good and flat. Next, I'll make one end of the antler flat so it can be glued solidly to the wooden block. The disc sander comes in handy for this step. Next, put a generous amount of thick CA glue, this is super glue, to one end of the antler. I use the thick CA because it gives you time to shift the antler around on the wood block if needed. Now slide the tailstock up to the opposite end of the antler and apply some pressure. This will squeeze out some of the CA glue, and you can wipe that up with a paper towel. Allow the glue to dry for several minutes. As an alternative method, you could also mount the antler into a 4-jaw chuck, just making sure you secure it well and get it fairly straight for turning. Step number four, next I'll begin turning the antler. For this project, I'll be using my carbide tools with the round cutter, the square cutter, and the detail cutter tip. What I like about these carbide turning tools is the cutter tips are replaceable and you don't have to sharpen them. I'll also use a couple of parting tools, a roughing gouge, and a 3/8 inch spindle gouge. When turning deer antler with traditional turning tools, use high-speed steel chisels. And they need to be freshly sharpened since antler is a very hard material. I'll start by turning the antler blank into a cylinder. So I'll use the square carbide tool or the roughing gouge to do this. Leave about 3/8 of an inch for the base of the Christmas tree and don't turn that part at all. It will look good having the bark of the antler still showing at the base. For the next 3/8 of an inch up from the base, I recommend defining the trunk of the tree. So I'll use the parting tool to begin cutting out the trunk. At this point, don't turn the trunk too deep. We'll shape the trunk more later on. Once I have the trunk defined, I'll begin tapering the tree, either using the square carbide tool or a roughing gouge. I'll keep the tailstock in place for now to give me extra support. As I'm tapering the piece, I start to notice the antler becoming more porous. So I'll stop the lathe and apply some thin CA glue. The thin CA glue will wick into the antler pores and help make the antler stronger for turning. I'll do this several times as I continue to turn the antler. I'll also do this again before I get to the final shaping and polishing steps. Make sure you give the glue time to dry. You can use an accelerator to speed up the drying process. I highly recommend wearing nitrile gloves when dealing with CA glue. The thin glue will go everywhere, so be prepared. It's not any fun to get CA glue on your fingers or glue your fingers together. After I've tapered the antler a lot and applied CA glue to strengthen the antler, I'll remove the tailstock and do my final turning without it. There are many ways to do the final shaping. Check out the examples in this photo. I'll be using a thin parting tool and a 3/8" spindle gouge and the detail cutter to define the tree branches and round them over. First, I'll use my pencil and mark out the areas for the branches. Then I'll use the thin parting tool and begin defining the branches. Next, I'll use either the spindle gouge or the detail cutter to round over the branches and taper them. I found the detail cutter to be especially good for this, but either tool will work. I'm using the 1/4" parting tool to complete the tree trunk. Don't take too much off or you'll accidentally part the tree in two. I also use my round carbide tool for this part to do some final shaping. The round carbide tip is good for concave shaping. Shoot for making the trunk about 5/8 inch thick. Step number 5. Next I'll do the final sanding and polishing. Before I do the final sanding and polishing, I'll apply some more thin CA glue and maybe a little medium CA glue. Allow the glue time to dry and start with 120, 220, 500, and 1000 grit sandpaper. Then I'll use my micromesh cloths, 1500 and 2400 grit. Be sure to wear a dust mask and or turn on the dust collector for this step. As I move up through the finer sandpaper and the micromesh cloths, the antler will transform into a glossy finish. Since the Christmas tree will be indoors away from moisture, I don't worry about applying any kind of sealant to the antler. Next, I'll use my thin parting tool and gently part the tree off the lathe. I carefully cut my free hand under the tree to catch it when it comes off the lathe. Then I'll take the tree over to the disc sander and lightly sand off the nub from the parting process. Well, here is the finished Christmas tree, and I'm always excited by how these turn out. Leaving the bark on the base looks really nice. I enjoy giving these away as gifts, and they look great on the fireplace mantle, kitchen table, or a desk. Be sure to check out my other video tutorials on antler crafts. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give this video a like, and in the comments field, let me know what you like to make from deer antler. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.